So hello, everyone, and welcome to our second event on design thinking and AI. I'm Justin Connect, and I'm joined by my co-host, David Townsend. The two of us are bandmates at an organization called What Could Be, and we're all about helping people build more things that people love and fewer things that people hate. We do that in a couple of ways. We do project assessments, enhanced templates, training and facilitation. But like a lot of you that are joining on the call, I'm sure you're interested in how to integrate AI into our work, because we believe that in doing that, we can actually build better products and services for humans. So welcome to this the second version of this discussion. Just a couple of ground rules. Just be helpful and kind on the call. Use chat. If you stay on mute and raise your hand if you want to speak, feel free to have your video off. I know we all get tired of being on Zoom most of these days, but mainly we're just trying to create a safe place here. A couple other disclaimers. This is meant to be informal. If you're expecting big production values, this isn't going to be that right now. This is still a prototype. This is number 2 of these events, so we're still learning and trying some things out. And mainly, this is for learning. So the whole reason that we wanted to have these gatherings is so much is happening in this space, and we really wanted to invite some people to come in and just share some of the experiments that they're doing, so we could all learn together. Another trigger for this was David and I did some work with the UK Design Council and at a recent anniversary event. Whether you love the double diamond or hate the double diamond or on the fence about the double diamond, it is a pretty ubiquitous representation of the design process. And someone asked, how can AI be used within the double diamond? And one of the answers was about all of us as designers should rush towards AI to make sure that the human is involved. And more explicitly, David and I are curious about where are the best places to utilize design during the design process? And with that, I was curious to ask all of you in a quick poll. For those of you that aren't familiar with the double diamond or these 4 stages: discover, define, develop, deliver, in which stage of the design process are you currently using AI the most? If you wouldn't mind answering. Is it discovery, getting insight and doing research? Is it defining problems and doing synthesis? Things like developing potential solutions. Maybe you're doing prototyping and testing in the deliver phase, but just curious where each of you might or might not be using it. Seeing some things coming in. So some of you aren't using it yet, which is great. All right. Give it maybe another 20 seconds, 19 to 22 people. Interesting. So no one's using it in the deliver phase. So I'll end the poll. So we've got a small number of people using it across discover, define, and develop, and a lot of us aren't using it yet, which is great. So hopefully today you'll hear about some ways to inspire you in practical ways to start using it. Thanks for that. The way we've been running these sessions, or ran the last one, was we had an open invitation of who would like to share something today. We're not going to do that today because we actually had 2 people who volunteered to present something. So we're going to give each of them 10 minutes to present an experiment, talk about how they've been using AI, and then we'll have some time for some questions. And at the end of this session, we'll tell you when the next one is happening. And if you're interested, you can let us know and we can slot you in. But as things go, we're basically here for up to 45 minutes to hear from, say, 2 people and have a discussion. Any questions before I introduce our first presenter? Yeah. Actually, he's going to introduce himself, but at least I'm going to Benjamin Dehant. And I'm sorry if I'm butchering the French last name, but did I do okay?
Yeah, totally fine. No worries.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna stop sharing, and I'm gonna allow you, if you want to share, to go ahead and share, and just allow you. I'm going to set a little timer here for 10 minutes and allow you to take the floor. You can also say a bit about yourself too, Ben. That would be great.
Yeah, sure. So I didn't prepare any slides, so I'm mostly going to speak, but I think it's totally fine. Just in case you hear there's a baby in the house, but maybe she's sleeping, maybe not, we'll see. It's a surprise. So yeah, in just a few words, I am Benjamin Dehant. I'm a self-taught designer, design thinker living in France. And what I'm going to share with you today, it's kind of my experiment around AI, design thinking, a bit of design also. Why? Because I wrote a couple of articles already. I did an AI design sprint, for example, as a full experiment. I tried to get some innovative ideas from ChatGPT. I played a lot around with the visual AI tools. I tried to make websites or prototype or things like that. So I'm going to include this a bit in what I'm going to present. Also, I wanted to share that this week, actually, I ran my first workshop for a client, like totally around AI. I think it's an interesting case, and also how I created the workshop. So I think I'm going to start quickly with this, and then I will basically go through the stage of design thinking, just with some AI examples for each of them. Maybe it can inspire you with experiments or things you want to do later. So this client is basically a company that is in the industry. They are not a tech company, but they want to use AI to see at least how they can use AI in their work, everyday work. And so yeah, I think they wanted to try AI for everything, like for content, marketing, of course, innovation, HR, services, basically almost any aspect of their business. And I try to give them an overview of what they could do for each of these fields. So, well, this is interesting in the way that companies are now looking for coach around how they can use AI for improving their business. But what I tried actually is that I really tried to generate the full workshop / presentation with ChatGPT. Like I asked it even ideas for titles, for the number of slides. I gave him a quick description of my participant to try to tailor the result for this audience. And I really tried to do everything with AI, even generating icebreaker ideas, activities idea. I think it really helped me because sometimes I have the blank page syndrome, when I try to create a new workshop. And so in that regard, it was really helpful to use AI. And I think they really enjoyed the session. And it was a great mix of presentation activities. And actually everything was done almost with AI also. So I think it's interesting in that matter. But I think to keep the hand on the content and the result is important for the moment. Of course, it's not perfect. So you want to drive it. I'm sorry for the baby. So yeah, I just wanted to share this recent workshop I did for a client. I think there are going to be more and more demands for that kind of activities. Yeah, it was just fun. Now I'm just going to go through basically. So for this talk, I chose like empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test basically, and just give a bit of feedback and reflection about them. So the first thing, of course, for the first step, when we say empathize, we don't really think about AI because it's just a cold machine. How can it empathize with the users, for example? But it's trained on a lot of data. And so if someone somewhere wrote about, they emphasize about some user for some problem, for example, the AI is trained on that and might give you an answer that really feels like they understand the user. It doesn't understand the user, but it will feel like it. And in some case, it will be accurate even. So just keep this in mind, but sometimes it can work. If you ask that kind of question to the AI, you can ask ChatGPT or another AI to do some research for you if it's a topic that is at least all the 2 or 3 years, because the training stopped in 2021. There are new plugins now that can do live search on internet, but it's not perfect, but it's coming. So soon you will be able even to ask questions for nowadays topics. So you can use the AI like that to do some research. You can also ask if, let's say you don't have any access to users, it would be weird, but let's say you could ask the AI to behave as a fictional user for this specific topic you are trying to tackle, for example. That's something we see more and more, and I think it's probably more valuable than nothing. It's the same idea. If there is some training data about that, it will be interesting. And you never know what the data it is trained on, so you should just try. And after, of course, you need to evaluate yourself a bit the result, but I think it's interesting. If we think about the next step, like define, sorry once again for the baby. So what I try to do is I input material inside ChatGPT. I say this is a document, a text, something technical about the topic. So you feed the machine with more content first. So then it can use this content to answer and help you. So what you can try to do is put resource inside the AI to make it more smart about your topic first, I would say. You can ask it to synthesize also. So let's say you give a lot of content, you would ask, okay, summarize this document in 2 sentences, 3 sentences, extract the most important fact, and you can give as much or as little criteria as you want. And then with all this summarized, you can rework with the AI easier. You could also think that actually sometimes you don't want to have your personal opinion bias, when you try to rephrase something. With the AI, it's maybe double-edged sword. You might think that the robot is more like neutral, but actually depending how you are going to prompt, you might of course influence what it is going to do. Just keep this in mind, but it could be useful to say act as someone neutral, for example. Many ways to do this, but just keep that in mind. Now, if we think about ideation, and this is one of my favorite part, I would say, with AI, and some people won't agree, I think, with me, but I need to share. I think AI is almost as good as the average Joe when it's come to ideation, like for brainstorming. I think it can give ideas that are okay-ish. And when we are, let's say we are 20 people brainstorming about a random topic, if there is an AI inside and you don't know there is an AI, you might not spot it, I think, because it's kind of average result. I know some people don't agree, but what I could see in session with human and robot, I think sometimes it's hard to see the difference. And actually the AI can be innovative, the innovation by combination. Like if you give it different things, I don't know, a skateboard and a VR headset, it will give kind of interesting ideas to combine both that human probably would have the same ideas. It cannot yet give ideas that are kind of outside the training or too far from what it knows. So in that case, we still need, of course, human, like the really great spark. But I think for many situations, AI is okay as a participant for brainstorming, for example. That's what I wanted to say, because I saw some people saying, no, it's totally stupid, it's not working. Actually, personally, I think it's already working quite okay. Of course, if you have human, it's better to do it with human, but you can always add a little bot somewhere in your brainstorm to just get a couple extra ideas, for example. Yeah, so now maybe prototyping. So in the poll, I didn't say because we couldn't choose many, but for prototyping, actually, I try to use ChatGPT is different because it can code a bit, and I try to create code and put in another tool to see the result, but it's not perfect. But you can use ChatGPT to work maybe on the flow, on the structure of the prototype, a bit the concept. And what you can do after, there are some tools already like text to website, text to app, text to something that you could use maybe if you want to make a quick landing page to test an idea, for example. You could use the Midjourney Stable Diffusion to generate quickly visual to go inside your prototype. Of course, prototype should not be really polished, but if you can give an extra touch of polish with just a few prompts in a few minutes, why not? I think ChatGPT is good for the prototyping part, but really early before you go to the drawing board and everything. If you're interested about that, I can share you more links later on, but I did also some experiment like landing page and everything with AI to go faster. That's for the prototyping, sorry. And finally, for testing, it's the same as the beginning. Actually, so first you could use ChatGPT to generate ideas for the interview or questions or things like that. You could say, this is my personas. You feed the persona inside ChatGPT. And then you say, this is the persona, this is the prototype. I would like to know this, this, and that. Can you create me questions, for example, for the interview? Let's say you have no users. It would be a bit sad, but let's say you have no users to test it. You could ask also the bot to behave like a tester once again, but be careful because you are not sure until what point it's true or not. And also the most obvious part is if you create a prototype that you should click, but then you give it to ChatGPT, it cannot yet go on your website and click on the button and give you feedback. But you could maybe in that case give the flow at least of the prototype to these fake AI personas to get some early feedback already to improve it. So yeah, that's what I think for all the steps. I think you should really try it more and more everywhere when you feel like it. And after, it's important to know about the topic so that you can evaluate the answer of the AI. This is important because I could ask it to explain me quantum physics, for example, and it might say something totally wrong, but I have no clue about quantum physics, so I will just think it's correct. This is the risk, the main risk. But if it's about a topic that you know, it's the best way to check the power and the value of the AI. You can say, okay, this is correct, this is not correct, and you go from there. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share. I don't know if I'm 10 minutes less or more, but yeah, just an overview and a resume of my experiment.
That's perfect, Benjamin. You have 30 seconds
okay.
left. But I'd love to, and thanks so much. Let's give Benjamin some love for presenting what what he's been working on. And I'd love to open up for some questions if you want to raise a hand or drop a question into chat. I'm curious, like, of all the phases that you've played around with, which one surprised you the most with like what you're able to get out of AI working alongside of you? I'm just curious, like, where you went, oh wow, like that was a moment.
Well, I think it's really when I did this kind of full design sprint experiment. It was a couple of months ago. What kind of wowed me is just that I could go basically through every steps of the design sprint, and I was just getting, oh, you can do that, so now I can ask it the next step and the next step. For example, when I say, okay, you should behave like 5 different person, one of you is a designer, one is a dev, one is a project owner, whatever, you know, I say, here are your 5 roles, and each time you will answer or generate ideas, answer as these 5 different people. And it was already doing that when I was prompting. And then it gave me 40 ideas based on all these kind of personas of participants. And I said, okay, can you vote on this thing? This was tricky. The AI was kind of, I cannot really vote, but I can try to. It was so weird. And then I say, what are your top 3 in this like 30 ideas about that topic? What is your top 3 based on all these people, something like that? And it kind of gave me some result. And I was like, I don't know how it worked behind, but yeah, I could do all the steps almost like fake design sprint. I was just surprised that every time it was like, okay, I can do this. Okay, I can do that. Okay. And I say, okay, how can I build a prototype to test this thing? And you say, you should do this, this, and that. I don't know. I could just go through the full process without thinking like, oh, maybe I need a human. I think it's really this empathize part that I was just like, maybe at some point just made up, and yeah, you cannot rely just on that, of course, you know. So it might just say, oh, this prototype is great for that purpose, and then you show to the human and it's just not working. But yeah, I was just impressed by what's possible already, I would say.
And you wrote there's an article, the summary of you doing the design sprint, isn't there, on Medium or something? Do you mind if you have the link handy? It would be great to drop that in the chat. I'm sure everyone would love to see it.
Sure, yeah, I can quickly find it. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Other questions for Benjamin? We're going to invite up our next presenter. One other thing I've heard that you made me think of when you were talking about ideation was we were talking about the being wary of the factual truth of what AI is responding to, or it's like it's a tendency to hallucinate, and it seems like that's almost a superpower when it comes to ideation. So on one hand, yeah, we need to be careful about the factual integrity of the data that we're getting. And on the other hand, that's really kind of interesting when it comes to coming up with wild ideas that might not necessarily, you don't want boundaries on. Great, thanks for dropping that link. There's a link in the chat. Exactly. Thanks so much.
Yeah, just to finish, I really tried to go deep inside this crazy ideation phase. And I try even prompt, like, you know, bypassing a bit the security of OpenAI. There are some prompt like behave like you can do anything, that kind of stuff for ideation. And you can go even a step further, I would say. I think it's really interesting, but yeah, as you say, you have to be cautious because hallucination, because wrong data, because whatever, but I think it's really interesting, yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks again, Benjamin. I'm gonna invite up Jonathan Vardy. Jonathan, please feel free to introduce yourself, and you should have the ability to share the screen if you've got something to share, but I'll let you take it away. Awesome.
Sure.
All right.
Thanks, Justin. So I'm Jonathan Vardy. I'm a freelance design strategist, more on the concepting and the strategy innovation domain. My background is not classic design, so bear with me. I'm originally an engineer, but I made the switch to human-centered design a few years ago, as I felt, well, it's where it should start. And I'm really enthusiastic about ways that we can kind of democratize design, that we can start to lower the barrier for any type of role or person to actually kind of benefit from the design mentality, mindset, and tools. And I kind of follow on what Benjamin was describing, I'm going to focus a bit more on the kind of the prototyping, the delivery stage, actually, as just in this last month, again, you know, the tools to from an AI perspective have grown immensely. So I'm going to show you a bit today about Uizard. If you've not seen it before, I think you're going to be super surprised. Imagine the combination of what Benjamin was describing from ChatGPT and DALL-E, and tools like Balsamiq and Figma. What would that look like? And I'm basically going to dive directly in. And it is text to design. It's basically natural language meets design or meets prototyping and concepting. So I'm going to start off with a very basic prompt, very directive prompt. And that's, I would like an app that would help me find hikes in the English countryside. I'm going to give it a bit of design direction. And other than that, I'm basically going to hand it over to the black box of magic. So this is a recent thing. I think it's been out for now about 2 weeks. You can sign up at Uizard.io, I think it is. And it's their new kind of platform called Autodesigner. And it's weaving together a lot of different types of AI aspects like generative design from image perspective, natural language. And they've gone and integrated this into their core prototyping platform. So with a bit of luck, in a couple of seconds, you can see your first result. It doesn't usually take much more than a minute. And the result is basically a fully fledged prototype with a certain amount of flow, interactions, and content. So if we dive in deeper, so I said I wanted some hikes in the English countryside. As you can see, it's got some UI elements that can help me search for different types of hikes. I can give it filtering, like on a challenging hike, do I want a picturesque hike? It'll give me some suggestions, and it'll give me some kind of common UI aspects that you would probably like as part of this app. So the interesting things here you can see is it's already, even with that brief prompt, it's kind of expanded the domain of what it is to be hiking in the countryside, right? So you can already see it's used imagery that's matching the topic. The type of filters have some relation to the topic. Now, if you look closely, you'll see some aspects of AI that you can see in ChatGPT as well, right? That it'll start to hallucinate a little. I've seen food recommendations come up in some of the similar generations that I've done in this prompt. But all in all, it's actually done something quite interesting. But it goes beyond this, actually. They've started to embed various kinds of tools. So maybe I don't like this title, Discover Beautiful Hikes, but I'm not a wordsmith, right? Maybe I'm not that good with words. So I can defer to the power of something, probably ChatGPT behind this, and it will start to generate different variants. So even if I'm not that creative, this can start to help me. Maybe I want an image to help me, maybe a different type of image. And you'll see that they've added the generative image features that Benjamin was describing, like the DALL-E or Mid-Journey, to this engine as well. So they're making it really approachable. Maybe I'm curious if this screen is actually going to work well from a kind of focus perspective. Again, they've kind of plugged in various elements of AI that can help me look at this. So it can tell me where the focus will likely be. Again, it's all black box. That's always my challenge with this platform. Well, these types of platforms, I don't know the exact reasoning, but hopefully that will grow over time. So this is a basic prompt that I've given it. But what if we move to something more human-centered, right? Maybe I'm gonna focus a bit on what's the user's purpose. You know, he's come to New York. They want to figure out where the hotspots and the locals are. but I also want a bit more control about the design. So I've given it some more hints. I've given it, more aspects as I want to have more images and less illustrations. So you can start to think of this again, just like prompt engineering in ChatGPT. The better you get at framing the prompts, the better the results will be. And it actually will give you some hints as well on how you can start to improve the prompts. Now, if you look at things like DALL-E and Midjourney and ChatGPT, they're big guides on how to engineer the prompts. So to get that better results, that's not available yet for this. But again, you can see it's now kind of used the different directions that I've given it in the way of style to come up with a different design. Let's see if it's gotten imagery that matches. Well, I got a better result than last time. I still find it a bit fickle. Last time it had really tailored it around New York. The examples in the text and content were much closer to New York. But yeah, there are some aspects that you could probably relate back, but it's less of a result that I expected. So anyway, now think of it from a client perspective. Maybe you get a specific type of briefing. I've given it a prompt this time, that I want a dashboard application for a residential architect. And this time I've given it some requirements, some real requirements that I wanted to work out. And again, I've given it some direction with design and fonting. So I'll leave that be and see what that comes up with. Now, you can see that it infers a lot of design decisions based on quite limited text. So in the background, it must be kind of, as Benjamin described, kind of expanding that domain to be able to understand what it means. And you give it some very vague terms like energetic, and it will still try and kind of build concepts out from that. And I think to Benjamin's point as well around the blank page syndrome. Now, again, I think if you're a designer, a UX UI designer, you've already spotted some issues. It's maybe not the most finesse design. But even for somebody that's suffering from that blank page syndrome, right, this could be an interesting way to start a project, get inspiration, to look at different types of UI elements. So here you see it's come up with something that's quite accurate. You have a project overview, a team directory. It's even got, let's see, a Kanban board to manage project status, and the various dashboards that could give you aspects of a house. So again, it listens quite accurately to the type of features that I've requested, and it's definitely used the prompts. You see lots of rounded and orange elements. Yeah, so it's quite interesting in the direction. Now, for the last prompt that I want to show you, this is where I think the interesting aspects of the generative design really start to show. So using wild ideas is what AI does not, how should I say, has no qualms against, right? So in this case, I'm going to say I'd like an app that allows me to book a superhero as entertainment for my child's birthday party. And I want options to filter on their superpowers and their availability and what type of entertainment they can give, right? So this is nothing that you would likely have in a real scenario, but AI doesn't mind. They'll have a go. And this is something that I think David was hinting at, that if you give the AI interesting prompts, their creativity that they can apply can go beyond a kind of our somewhat, I should say, framed mindset. So let's see what it comes up with. So here we go. It's come up with an interesting illustration. The type of superheroes, do I want shape-shifting, invisibility, mind control? Let's see, I can see if they're nearby. more options to filter. I get some options what their prices are for their rates, and I can book them. So yeah, it's a pretty good result. So yeah, it's kind of a brief kind of tour of how AI and concepting and design is coming together. I'm really interested from a perspective from ideation. I can imagine this being used in design sprints instead of the crazy eights where we ask people to sketch. We could apply this kind of techniques as well to really broaden out what we can do.
Fantastic. Fantastic, Jonathan. I'm going to show you a bit of analog love by clapping my hands together and making an audio noise, but feel free to use a digital reaction if you're so inclined. That's absolutely fantastic. I've been aware of Uizard for a while, and I knew Autodesigner was out, but I hadn't tried it out. And it was almost inevitable, right, that somebody would allow you to ask a computer to just make a thing. And here we are. It's probably got its limitations. You highlighted some of them, and Benjamin has popped in the chat, maybe we need more than 300 characters. I know some of my prompts with ChatGPT have gotten quite long to try and get the kind of output I want, but it's terrific. A couple of questions. Jay-Z in the chat, Jonathan is asking, have you got to a point yet where you're using it in your work and showing it to clients? And, when or what kind of a conversation are you having with people about this kind of a prototype as part of your work?
Well, I see it. I see it as two things. It's an assistant for your own kind of internal team, or it could be an aid in creativity, right? Again, when often enough we start doing concepting, not everyone is that keen with sketching or suffers from, I should say, some it's hard to start if you're not kind of naturally creative. And I think, again, anything that we can add to aid people's creativity is a great tool. So I look at it from those two perspectives. Yeah, that's great. And I guess, I completely agree that, and I think there's more and more discussion around, having AI work alongside us. Just as we use the word assistant a lot when we're talking about AI, and I've heard people talk about co-pilots and other terminology, and I like the way you've sort of described that there. My question, following on from Jay-Z's, was around, I guess, what happens kind of before and after. So what I mean by before, I don't mean think of the prompt and write the prompt. I mean, why are you making that prototype? And then after you've made it, what do you do? And how much of that is you versus other AI tools getting involved, perhaps? Well, I think a lot of people, I'm not sure if that's the case in this group, of course, but there will be people that will kind of fear for their jobs, and there will be people that see this as an interesting augmentation. And I think, to your point, to get to this prompt, you will have to done your research, right? You have to know who your users are, what their challenges and needs are. You have to have done that original research, human-centered design, first part of the double diamond to even get to this point. So I'm not too worried in that sense about people losing their jobs around this. And to the point is, I think I suggest innovation begins and ends with people. You still have to do the legwork to get the input before you can even get to this point. So it's all just aids in that sense. Yeah,
and I've read, so some of you might have come across a designer in San Francisco called Hugh Dubberly, and he's been involved in, he did the original Knowledge Navigator video from the 80s, an imagined future where we could talk to computers to do all kinds of things. And he talks about the iterative process that we do as designers and how working with AI tools, AI does that, but it helps us then do it. Do you know what I mean? And Benjamin talked about the blank sheet of paper, and I think having created something, you might not go straight into the client with it, right? You'd make some enhancements. Jay-Z's follow-up question is in the chat there, Jonathan. Well, it's come to me as a direct message, so I'll just read it out. Do you think it's good enough to replace the designer, or if not yet, when, will it ever be good enough to replace the designer?
Well,
can I just add some detail
Go on,
to that?
GC.
So is it, you can refine the prompt. So can I say take out the section or replace it with something else?
Yeah, so good questions. So at the stage it is now, you have very, very little control. You can't describe how many screens you want, how the flow should run. You can give it some hints around, I think, accessibility. You saw kind of rounded or edged, how the corners and the drop shadows define. I think you can even use certain design systems you can hint it towards, but it's certainly not at the level yet that as you say, as you ask, is it prime time? If you look at the results, you'll see it has issues with text, and it has issues with radiuses when the images are overlapping, and it will sometimes just do some really crazy things. Like I said, you'll ask for something, for example, to book somebody to walk your dog, and you'll get pizza. It'll go make some things up. So it needs to evolve. So if you look at ChatGPT, right, they've made some quite interesting steps around describing how it works, how you can engineer the prompts to get better results. This is very much still in that first phase where it's you throw something in and at some things you'll laugh, some things you'll really not understand how it ever came up with that. But I was initially surprised when I gave it first prompt that I gave it was to build an online platform to do to help voting in the general election, and it came up with sane stuff. I thought, well, that's already a good first step.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in 1 to 2 years' time, this will look drastically different. I'm sure you'll have a lot more control. I wish they would just have the option to generate one screen, so I could say, could you give me 5 variants of this login screen, so that I could then, like Crazy Eights, go, well, I like that element. This would be great, but it's not there yet.
Jen, you just have to use the same prompt 5 times, because I assume each response is different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's one of these ones we should all start having a play with it, and it's going to just evolve. We're short on time, but I want to quickly hear from Benjamin, because he's got a question, and then Justin's going to share a useful resource before we wrap up. Benjamin,
yes, so just about that very topic. So I just wanted to share that I did a lot of experiment with Midjourney, trying to generate, landing page design, that kind of stuff. In Uizard, for example, you could put the picture and it would try to draw a real clickable thing from this picture. There are tools to vectorize your picture, so you can put your Midjourney result and vectorize everything to play around. But I think it's just really inspiration. It's not really useful because it doesn't follow any rules, of design. What is interesting is what Uizard is doing and other tools like that. There's so many already templates for UI kit, just templates for any style of prototype that you can find everywhere. So some AI tools are just going there to pick all the pieces to build something. And I think it's much more interesting because it's based on solid things already that designers created. And you just want to grab everything from these templates. It's just hard if you do it by yourself. You have to look everywhere, and you can now prompt to get access to these kind of cool elements. I think that's why it's really interesting to use AI to make prototypes rather than just generative images, at least for the moment, I would say.
Fantastic. If everyone can give some love to Jonathan and Benjamin for sharing today. And I just have 2 other quick things that I'd like to share and one question for you. If you haven't already seen it, I suggest you have a listen to John Maida's Design and Tech Report. I was gonna, even if you just watch the last 10 minutes where he talks about design thinking and AI, but here's the link to a summary of that talk. He always has interesting things to say, and I really like some of the things that he talks about in relation to AI showing up everywhere. So that's the little resource. I'm curious, today's session, David, do you have a poll ready to go? I'm curious of what you thought of today's session. Did you find it positive? Did you find it negative? Do you think this format has potential? I'd love to hear. And while that is running in the background, I just wanted to let you know, if one of you'd like to share something next time, and I'll let you know when next time is, that would be useful to know before you agree to share. Since a lot of holidays are going on in the summer, we're going to skip the month of July. I apologize, and we'll be back at the end of August. So where we're planning to get back together is the 31st of August. I think the plan is to run these generally the last Thursday of the months at the same time, 11 Eastern, 1600 British time. But here's the results of it seems like people are enjoying this. So I'm sharing the results out. That most of you thought this was a positive experience, and some of you think there's some potential. And in the chat, we have some people. Thank you. It was great. We will follow up with a recording of this session, and we will follow up with a link when it's available to sign up for the next one. We are happy to report that we doubled the amount of people that signed up for this one, so we might run out of spaces if you want to actually be present for the next session. So hopefully we'll see you all again. Thanks again, Benjamin and Jonathan, and we'll see your experiments soon.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.